It's like day and night. It was like day and night. So we used to change U.S. currency. So you were supposed to change U.S. currency into West German marks, and then take your West German marks to the bank, and they would change it into East German marks, 1 for 1. And I think back then, I don't know, I vaguely remember a dollar was like 3 marks or something, West German marks. But we knew a bank that would give us like 8 or 9, I think it was, 10 East German marks to every dollar. So we used to go down there, and if we were planning on going over and, change, $100, and we'd go over to East Germany. And we'd go through their checkpoints and everything. You weren't allowed to talk to them. You sit in the car. We drove over. My friend had a car, and we'd sit in the car, and they'd walk around the car and look at us. And we'd go over, and we would go to specialty shops, like a crystal shop, and walk in and then talk to the owners and tell them, say, we want to go in the back room where the good stuff is. So all the stuff out there was like secondaries. So they would take us in the back room, and we'd pay them a little extra. But it was so cheap because of the exchange rate. And I mean, I sent crystal glasses and wine glasses and cuckoo clocks and stuff like that home. Here they would have cost a fortune. We'd go to eat someplace, and we'd have so much money. We used to call it funny money, monopoly money. We'd just try to get rid of it. And when time come to pay the bill, we'd pay the bill, and we'd give them huge tips. And the waiters and waitresses, when they saw Americans, because we're always in uniform, I mean, they always wanted us because they knew they were going to get great tips. But it was pretty stark. I mean, all the cars were either black, white, or gray. All the cars, all the same car pretty much was black, white, or gray. Things were pretty, it just seemed like it was, just a very held back time. It was just, I didn't make any friends there, East German friends. Like I said, we'd go shopping, we'd go out, we'd eat and stuff like that, and then we'd come back. But it was very dismal.
Any experiences with the Russians?
No, not really. They were just like us, I think. They had to do a job, and we had a radio in Checkpoint Charlie on a shelf in the little building that we were in. And it was on the one side, on the left side of the building. So they would come through the checkpoint, and their orders, of course, we weren't to stop them. They just drove on through. They would slow down, and so we could see who they were, and they'd go on, and we'd log it in. But I remember they'd come through, and, they'd do one of the head nods, yeah. And I never traded with them, but you used to trade with them, collar brass and stuff if you could. If for some reason they had to stop. I remember one time standing, there was something they were doing, but they had to stop, and one of the soldiers was outside the vehicle, and he looked at me and went like this, opened up his hand, and he had some collar brass in his hand. And I said, I shook my head a little bit, and I went like this, and I pointed. My commanding officer was standing, a few feet away, and he, just shook his head up and down a little bit. And I remember once they were driving through, and this radio that we had a camera, a secret, a supposedly secret camera in it. And when they came through, we were supposed to take a picture as they went by. And they were coming through, and we saw them coming. We were kind of late, and we went to go over to the camera, and we're standing there like this to push the button, and they went by. Pretty soon we see the car stop, backed up, stopped so we could take the picture of them. It's like, hey, thanks. You know? And so it was, you know, and then in front of us, probably about 20 yards, 25 yards, was like a two-story building where they sat in and just looked down at us all the time. And, you know, and every once in a while we get a head nod or, you know, a little thumbs up or, you know, something along those lines. But other than that, we really didn't communicate too much. You know, one time when I was on patrol, we had a patrol call. It was the border patrol for our sector. And about every 300 meters, they have a tower. And the Americans or whoever, the West Germans would put a tower on our side. And I remember one night I went to one of the towers. It was way out, and I was working the overnight shift. I was by myself. I climbed up on our tower, and I'm standing there, and I'm just looking around. And it's like, man, it's a beautiful. It was a summer night, and I said, man, it's beautiful. And all of a sudden, a huge spotlight, boom. And you know, I just stood there. I said, man, I feel so vulnerable right now. You know, they left it on for about 10 seconds, and then ding, turned it off. You know, it's like, whew, man, that's kind of scary. You know, they catch me like that. And I often thought about that when I was over there. It's like, it is a little scary, you know, but it was fine. It was fine. They were just goofing with me, I think, you know, so.